The Sigonella Crisis of October 1985 was a dramatic and highly symbolic confrontation between Italy and the United States that unfolded in the aftermath of the hijacking of the Italian cruise ship Achille Lauro. The crisis began on October 7, 1985, when 4 armed members of the Palestine Liberation Front, PLF, seized control of the vessel while it was sailing in the Mediterranean Sea. Their primary demand was the release of Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails. The situation took a tragic turn when the hijackers killed an elderly, wheelchair-bound American passenger, Leon Klinghoffer, and threw his body into the sea, a shocking act that intensified international outrage and pressure for swift justice. After tense negotiations, the hijackers surrendered to Egyptian authorities, who allowed them to board an Egyptair Boeing 737 bound for Tunisia under the promise of safe passage. However, the United States, determined to hold them accountable for Klinghoffer's murder, tracked the flight and ordered U.S. Navy F-14 Tomcat fighters to intercept the plane over international waters, forcing it to land at the Sigonella Airbase in Sicily, which was jointly operated by NATO, Italy, and the U.S. What followed was an unprecedented standoff that tested the limits of diplomacy and sovereignty. Upon landing, the American forces, including Delta Force commandos, immediately surrounded the plane and demanded custody of the hijackers, intending to extradite them to the United States for prosecution. However, Italy's Prime Minister Bettino Craxi, asserting his country's sovereignty and jurisdiction, refused to comply, arguing that the hijacking had occurred aboard an Italian-flagged ship and therefore fell under Italian legal authority. Italian carabinieri, heavily armed and under orders to defend the plane, quickly arrived on the scene, leading to a surreal and highly tense confrontation where Italian and American soldiers pointed weapons at one another, prepared for a possible shootout. Negotiations dragged on through the night as diplomatic channels were frantically used to prevent bloodshed between 2 NATO allies. Craxi remained firm, emphasizing that Italian law would prevail, and ultimately, the United States backed down, allowing Italy to take custody of the hijackers. Despite the resolution of the immediate crisis, its aftermath proved just as controversial. Italy proceeded to prosecute the hijackers, sentencing 3 of them to lengthy prison terms, but the mastermind of the operation, Abu Abbas, was allowed to leave Italy. This decision, widely criticized by the United States, was attributed to diplomatic maneuvering and Italy's concern about possible terrorist reprisals, highlighting the delicate balance Italy sought to maintain between combating terrorism and avoiding further conflict in the volatile Middle East. The escape of Abu Abbas strained relations between Italy and the U.S., with Washington expressing frustration over what it saw as leniency, while Rome defended its actions as necessary to uphold sovereignty and prevent further escalation. The Sigonella Crisis remains a defining episode in modern international relations, demonstrating Italy's determination to assert its independence even when confronted by intense pressure from its most powerful ally. It underscored the complexities of international law, sovereignty, and counterterrorism cooperation, raising difficult questions about jurisdiction and accountability in cases involving terrorism. Moreover, it revealed fault lines within NATO, exposing differences in approaches to terrorism between Europe and the United States. In Italy, the event cemented Bettino Craxi's reputation as a leader who was willing to stand up to American dominance, although it also drew criticism domestically for the decision to let Abbas escape justice. For the United States, the crisis highlighted the challenges of pursuing terrorists across international borders and navigating alliances in a world increasingly defined by asymmetric threats. Today, the Sigonella Crisis is remembered as a moment when diplomacy, law, and military force collided, leaving behind lessons that continue to resonate in debates about sovereignty, counterterrorism, and international cooperation.